Niki Lauda and everybody else. This race over 70 laps, which is a distance of 185.3 miles. Perfect conditions. And Senna gets between Piquet and Prost. Keke Rosberg comes out from this corner, pass through. Keke Rosberg, who put up an absolutely meteoric qualifying lap in the last 60 seconds of practice yesterday to qualify in 4th place from 27th, leads the Portuguese Grand Prix in his Williams Honda, which is handling better, he says, than it has in recent races, and Nigel Mansell is in 2nd place. Alain Prost is 3rd. So Nelson Piquet is behind the Frenchman, and at the end of this lap we will see where Niki Lauda is in comparison with his 11th place start. But what a wonderful start for Keke Rosberg, and Niki Lauda not going well. On the half lap he was in 13th position.
Yes, Lauda took a very conservative start, didn't want to get involved in the fighting because obviously it's essential that he gets a finish and is in a position to score some points. Fabulous start by Rosberg, who's really going for it. He's stretched out a little bit of clear air already. Mansell came bursting through, and it was quite a good scrum at the first corner. And a spin there.
And it's still Rosberg. We will have to ident as the spin goes through. It's still Mansell 2nd. It's still Prost 3rd. In 4th position is Ayrton Senna. In 5th place it's Michele Alboreto. In 6th place it is De Angelis. And it looked like Nelson Piquet that spun. And Nelson Piquet has not gone past us, so it appears, the world champion who spun on the first lap, and that will have destroyed his chances of doing well in the Portuguese Grand Prix, the story of which, as you can see, with the Williams handling pretty wildly on the corners, but Keke Rosberg there, and Nigel Mansell looked as though he's starting to close.
And Mansell ran wide there, coming out of that tight corner, and Alain Prost took advantage and nipped through. Just did that twisted section before, had a fabulous shot of Keke Rosberg, really sliding the Williams around, throwing the back of the car out, getting it sideways. And Rosberg has really come from nowhere at this meeting. He had a terrible time in practice and hadn't even qualified to it until the last couple of minutes of practice yesterday, when he got out and put in a storming lap and made that fabulous start. And he looks to be quite comfortable out there. But now, of course, we're going to see what Prost can do about it. Can Prost close up now that he's got a clear track in front of him?
There is little doubt that Alain Prost has got the better overall car package than Keke Rosberg. The McLaren handles superbly, and I am expecting to see Alain Prost whittle away at Keke Rosberg's lead as Rosberg goes through lap 2, leading. Prost is 2nd. In 3rd position it is Mansell. Then there is quite a gap before Senna goes through in 4th place, followed by Alboreto in 5th, and the 2nd of the John Player cars, that of Elio De Angelis, in 6th place. So both the JPS cars are in the top 6.
Well, Lauda started to move slowly through the field. He was just, as they went past us here in the grandstand, he was just moving up into 9th place, I think.
Rosberg, Prost. The Williams Honda. Keke Rosberg's lap when he qualified yesterday was nothing short of absolutely sensational. With only about a minute to go, his engine having blown in his race car, he casually walked back to the pits, put on his helmet and balaclava again, got in the car, raced off, and you can see that now, with him in the lead as they come through to finish now the 3rd position, there is one of the Ram Hart cars out. It looked like that of Philippe Alliot, and indeed it was. So Alliot retired. Nelson Piquet has spun. The race leader is still Keke Rosberg. We are on lap 3 in this 70-lap race, and you can see now that Prost is indeed shaping to close up on the gearbox of Keke Rosberg's car as they go into turn 1, which is a falling downhill right-hander, which they take at some 150 plus miles an hour. Now into turn 2, that's the third gear, 125 miles an hour, Ben. Round turn 3, and they start to climb at about 100 miles an hour, and it's still Rosberg, Prost with Nigel Mansell holding a watching brief in third position. In fourth position is still Senna. Alboreto is in fifth position with De Angelis in sixth, and they're coming round now, turn 6 very shortly, and Niki Lauda is down the field in 11th position. He's clawed back 2 places from the ones that he dropped because he was down to 13th at one point, but he's got to do better than that. However, he's got plenty of time to do it, as now into the top straight as they come out of this long right-hander and into this little S-bend come the race leaders at the end of lap 4 with 66 laps to go at the end of it, and it is Rosberg, Prost, Mansell.
And Alain Prost now. It'd be interesting to see. You see that Honda's very powerful, and the Williams Honda is, if anything, pulling away from Alain Prost on the straights, which means that he's going to have to do quite a bit of thinking and working out a way to get round Keke Rosberg. There's no doubt that Prost can go quicker if on his own, but with a straight line speed disadvantage, he's going to have to struggle.
And Niki Lauda is now up into 10th position, right behind Stefan Johansson and Patrick Tambay, who are 8th and 9th, and I think is going to take them. But what a race Keke Rosberg is driving. I won't say the forgotten man of 1984, because he did, after all, win the Grand Prix. Number 6 there, Keke Rosberg won at Dallas, against the odds, on the marbles, in the streets at Dallas, and confirmed the view of many people that he's the fastest racing driver alive in Formula 1 today, and he's certainly showing that at the moment. Keke Rosberg's reflexes are nothing short of uncanny. He can stop a slide the fraction of a second after it begins. But I say again, the cool and calm Alain Prost has certainly got a better handling car, and if Rosberg has to keep fighting the Williams as he's doing now, it's going to wear even him out, and that will be Alain Prost's opportunity to get through. Meantime, it is still Mansell there in third position and not so very far behind. It is still Senna fourth, Alboreto fifth, De Angelis sixth, Derek Warwick is seventh, Tambay is eighth, Johansson is ninth, and right behind them is Niki Lauda in 10th position. The crowd rises in front of me. Did you see why, James?
Yes, Lauda was just making up the place past Tambay then, and in fact, Johansson already got past Tambay and is moving ahead quite well. So Johansson's going to be a difficult one for Niki to pass when he gets there. It looks like Piquet's car parked after his spin.
This is lap 6 out of 70, and this is as good a battle for the lead as we've seen in any race this year. Alain Prost, of course, will want to get into the lead and build up as much of a cushion as he can. He's not so much interested, and Nigel Mansell is gaining. Prost is not so much interested in winning his 7th Grand Prix for the year, He's got nothing to prove there. He's very, very interested in getting past Rosberg and therefore building up a cushion between himself and Lauda.
I saw a little puff of smoke come from the back of the Williams then, just as he was braking a couple of corners ago. But there was a dust cloud as well afterwards, but that wasn't in fact the same. And here goes Prost having a look. Rosberg's making him go the long way round, and he's not going to do it. And Rosberg was really leaning on him there, and with reasonable justification. And Niki Lauda is now up to 9th place and chasing Stefan Johansson. He's got rid of Patrick Tambay. He's clear of that, but both Holman's going very, very well indeed this weekend.
Yes, but look at this. these three going magnificently. These three being Rosberg, the leader, Prost in second place, and driving in his last race for the John Player Special Team Lotus team, Nigel Mansell, who has yet to win a Grand Prix, is in very good form. I was talking to him just before the race began. He feels fit, he feels ready for it, and he really is going for a victory. And the way he has closed up on Prost and Rosberg means he could do it. An interesting situation here, because I think that if Prost could get past Rosberg, he could pull away from him. The problem, as James has said, is that that Honda engine has got a lot of power. It's quicker on the straights, and that has given the chance for Nigel Mansell to close up, and you're looking at the battle for third on lap 8.
Yes, you see Prost getting the toe, and he's having a look down the inside. It's very dusty, the circuit down the inside, and he saw, well, he was really having a try, but Rosberg is definitely not going to make it easy for him to pass. He's very anxious for a win himself. He's had a pretty terrible season, apart from his wonderful drive in Dallas. So Rosberg, it's funny, most of these guys aren't chasing points for any reason, but of course everybody wants to finish the season on a high note. So there's going to be no help given to the two McLaren drivers. They're going to have to get on and fight for everything they get by themselves.
Where is Lauda, I hear you asking, and the answer is Niki Lauda is still in 9th position. And Johansson is keeping ahead of him. Both the Tolmans going superbly, because Senna is still in 4th place behind this stirring scrap for the lead between Rosberg, Williams Honda, Prost, McLaren tag, and Mansell in the JPS Renault.
Lauda will be very happy to see that Rosberg is, at the moment at least, halting Prost's progress, which he probably will be able to see because this track turns all over the place, and you can see other bits of the track as you go, because there are a lot of sort of 180-degree corners. And now Prost having another look, but and this time he's got a good draft, and I think he's inside him. Yes, and Alain Prost takes the lead, and I'm sure he's going to pull away now. Nigel Mansell still keeping good order in 3rd place, and here we see it again, and Prost got his car placed absolutely right, coming onto the straight, got a good toe, but still had to fight Rosberg under braking. Now you see the cars twitching a bit on the heavy braking, but Prost safely through, and that'll be a big sigh of relief for him.
And that was lap 9, and it gives Nigel Mansell the chance to close on Rosberg and try to do to the flying thin what Alain Prost has already done. And I should say that I have never seen Alain Prost as relaxed as he is here in Portugal. In South Africa last year, for the last race of the championship, when he could have won the championship by substantially defeating Nelson Piquet, he was a bag of nerves, he had to be guarded, he was downcast. But here, in exactly the same position, with a 3.5 points World Championship disadvantage, and that is Mark Surer going out of the race with a 3.5 points disadvantage, Alain Prost is nevertheless completely relaxed. I talked to him recently, and he was very, very cheerful and very optimistic. And Mansell now is going for that 2nd place. He's right up alongside Rosberg, who puts his foot down, and Mansell now is well, how about that, James?
Well, I thought that Mansell was taking a pretty big risk then. He wasn't really inside Rosberg properly, and you see Rosberg shuts on, and Mansell's right up the curb, and they were very lucky not to make contact. And I would have said that Mansell was overstretching the mark there. It was still Rosberg's corner, but he shouldn't have suffered any damage. Those curbs are pretty smooth. He'll ride up over those curves okay, all things being equal.
The interesting thing here, this scrap between Rosberg and Mansell, is that they're going to be teammates in the Williams Honda team next year, 1985. And Keke Rosberg has made it very clear that he doesn't actually want to drive with Nigel Mansell in the team. Now, how he will react to this forceful thrusting he's getting from Mansell, entirely justifiably, I should say, is difficult to judge. That was Jonathan Palmer, and now, on lap 10, it is Prost leading, Rosberg second, there he is, Mansell third, there he is, Ayrton Senna is still in fourth place, 7 seconds behind Mansell, who is third. Fifth is Alboreto, sixth is De Angelis, seventh is Warwick, eighth is Johansson, ninth is Niki Lauda, and not showing much sign of catching the Swede, Stefan Johansson. 10th is Patrick Tambay, 11th is Chiva, 12th is Patrese, and this time, Keke Rosberg gets into the inside line as quickly as he can to shut the door on Nigel Mansell. And of course, as these two slow each other up, Alain Prost, with a clear track in front of him, is pulling away in the lead.
Yes, well, he's doing that and going very well. As you just said, Murray, Lauda's progress really seems to have slowed down. He's got clear air in front of him, and he's making very little impression on Stefan Johansson, who's ahead of him. He's slowly catching him, but he certainly isn't looking like the sort of form that can slice him through into the second place that he currently needs to win the World Championship. So Lauda's form looks a bit dodgy. He had quite a lot of trouble with the car in practice. They had some engine trouble. They couldn't get the engine to run cleanly, and it was quite down on power. I'm not sure what his trouble is. I know he's running the same tires as Alain Prost.
And up into sixth position has gone Derek Warwick by passing Elio De Angelis. Remember, the World Championship hangs on this race, and at the present moment, Alain Prost in the lead and on his way to 9 points has more than made up that 3.5 points deficit between himself and his teammate Niki Lauda, who is only in 9th position, and Mansell's going for it again, and this time surely he's going to get through, because Rosberg had to move over, and yes, up into second place on lap 10-12 goes Nigel Mansell. Now, is he going to pull away from Keke Rosberg? Look at it again, as Prost has already done.
Yeah, same thing. That Williams is very fast on the straight, but Mansell that time got his toe just right, got properly ahead of him in the braking area and won the corner. Now, the question is, can Mansell do anything about staying with Alain Prost or preferably closing on him? He was very confident before the race. I'm very happy to be having a good weekend. So the JCS notices having a pretty good weekend.
Nigel Mansell yesterday had a presentation ceremony from the Lotus mechanics, a magnificent cluster of chromium-plated gear wheels headed by his own steering wheel, and a very emotional occasion it was, because Mansell's been with the Lotus team for 4 years, and sure enough, he is pulling away from Keke Rosberg. Question mark, is he catching Alain Prost? Well, the gap between Prost and the two of them, Mansell and Rosberg, was 8 seconds, and I'll give you the gap now, because Prost has just gone through and started another lap, as Mansell bears down on our commentary position here, and it's 9.9 seconds. And look how Senna there in 4th position, Alboreto in 5th, Warwick in 6th, De Angelis in 7th, Johansson in 8th, and Lauda in 9th position are closing up.
Yes, they're concertina together. Now, if Niki can do anything about that bunch, it'll take him a while to fight his way through it, I'm quite sure of that. But then he's really back in business.
What a magnificent struggle after the first two. There is the double world champion Niki Lauda, trying to catch and then get past Stefan Johansson in that 8th place. Johansson, that is the middle car of these three, who is going to lead the Toleman team in 1985. And by the way, Toleman are staying on here in Estoril next week to give tests to Jonathan Palmer, to Roberto Moreno. Somebody has gone off the circuit. It's Philippe Streff, the Frenchman who is driving the 3rd Renault and who has had a pretty disastrous practice period. He went off yesterday and today. I'm looking across the course and can see that Streff has gone off. But Look at this. Senna 4th, Alboreto 5th, number 11, De Angelis 6th, number 20, Stefan Johansson in the black helmet, then Niki Lauda. And Johansson trying to go round the outside of De Angelis as they go into turn 1, and that's no place to try and pass.
Yes, Niki's got quite a problem on his hands because Johansson and De Angelis are really bashing away in front of him, and he, above all, has got to keep out of trouble. So he can't afford to get into the scrap too much, but on the other hand, he can't afford to sit behind it indefinitely. So Niki's really got to have a bit of a go at some stage, but what he may be doing is hope that they'll get tangled up between themselves, and has De Angelis having another look. Oh, sorry, Johansson having another look around De Angelis, but De Angelis is having none of it. And the one problem for the McLaren is that it's not super fast on the straight. It's far and away the best handling chassis. They run a lot of downforce on the car, which doesn't help their straight line speed, obviously. But it does make passing very difficult on a track like this, as we saw even the difficulty that Prost had in getting past the Williams Honda at Rosberg, and then we saw how he absolutely flew away from him the moment he was passed.
Now look at this, 7th, 8th and 9th. De Angelis, Johansson and Lauda. Ahead of De Angelis in 6th position, and the last one in the points, Michele Alboreto. There is the Italian, and look at this. And the man who spun off across the course in the Renault was not Philippe Streff, it was Derek Warwick. So Warwick has gone plunging down into about 11th position. And now, as you look at Niki Lauda, trying to get up ahead and into the points and to preserve his chance of getting the World Championship, there he is. It is Alain Prost leading Nigel Mansell by 9 seconds. Mansell 4 seconds ahead of Rosberg, 3rd. Ayrton Senna 3 seconds in 4th place behind Rosberg. 5th is Alboreto. 6th is De Angelis. 7th, 8th and 9th, Johansson, Lauda and Torbek.
Well, now, this is a possible chance for Niki because Stefan Johansson has got a bit of space in front of him now and is no longer, for the moment, having his huge battle with Elio De Angelis. So Niki has got to try and get onto the main straight past the grandstand in exactly the right place to get a bit of a toe and then pass him into turn 1, because that seems to be the popular spot. But it's most important how Niki positions himself relative to... And there you see the gap between Prost and Lauda. It's only 21 seconds, but the problem is there are a lot of cars filling those 21 seconds. Now, has Niki positioned himself right to get a toe? He's just about right. He's going to have to do a pretty brave bit of braking at the end of the straight. That's, no, he had a look, but the Coleman is really very quick in a straight line. Credit to their chassis, of course, to aerodynamics, and of course to Brian Hart, who's done such a good job developing the Hart turbo engine.
Let us not forget, as we look at this battle, that ahead of it is the second Toleman, or rather the lead Toleman, is Ayrton Senna, driving in his last race for the Toleman team in 4th position. And Lauda, of course, with Warwick having spun, and by the way, Warwick's been in and changed all his tyres, Lauda is now up into 8th position, 2 places off the points.
I should also point out that Nelson Piquet seems to be back in the race and going, so he didn't actually stop, and he's in fact worked his way up to 17th place or so. So Nelson Piquet, do not discount. He's quite capable of getting his car into the points from that range.
51 seconds behind the leader, Nelson Piquet. Lap 16 out of 70. Prost leads, Mansell 2nd, Rosberg 3rd, Senna 4th, Alboreto 5th, De Angelis 6th, Johansson 7th, Lauda 8th. That is Lauda. Nigel Mansell is the fastest man on the circuit with 2 fastest laps. Now, he is starting to close on Prost. The gap was 9.9 seconds. It is 7.9 seconds. Lauda challenges Johansson. Lauda going for 7th.
Yes, Mansell has closed a little bit, so that'll be good news for Niki, but he's not closing fast enough, particularly. In the meantime, I really think Niki is going to have to be a little bit braver in the braking area at the end of the straight. He's going to have to stick his neck out a little bit if he's going to go for that championship, and he really can't afford to wait too much longer before he does something about getting rid of that gaggle. It's a big challenge for him, but he can't sit at the back of it indefinitely.
And this, alone on the circuit, is the race leader on lap 17, Alain Prost, majestically, smoothly as ever, driving around and closing up now on Joe Gartner in the Osella, soon to lap both him and Mauro Baldi, who are well down the field, about to be some 2.5 miles behind Alain Prost. Prost has already won 6 events this year, 6 of the World Championship Grand Prix races. This small, quiet, mild Frenchman is transformed when he gets into a racing car, and you can see for yourselves now that he will soon be going past the Osella with its V8 Alfa Romeo engine, and I don't think any of the Alfa team's powered cars, that is to say the Osellas and the Alfa Romeos themselves, are expecting to finish this race, and past the Osella goes Alain Prost, because the Alfa Romeos are extremely thirsty. That means to say that Chiva, Patrese, Gartner and Ginzani are all suspect. Look again at this passing manoeuvre by Alain Prost coming up and taking the Osella.
And I just noticed around the back of the circuit that I think Stefan Johansson has got past Elio De Angelis, and so Niki now has a new challenge. He has got De Angelis to have a go at, and he may or may not find that easier. He still, of course, is going to have to pass Johansson sometime.
And that means that only one team has got both its cars in the top 6, and that team is Toleman, with Senna in 4th position and Johansson in 6th place. As we look at the 2nd place man, Nigel Mansell, on lap 19, the order: Prost 1st, Mansell 2nd, Rosberg 3rd, Senna 4th, Alboreto 5th, Johansson 6th, De Angelis 7th, Lauda 8th, Tombe 9th, Chiva 10th, and Patrese 11th.
And Niki Lauda has passed Elio De Angelis. He was in the process of passing him as he came past our grandstand here. And so Lauda has moved up into 7th place, I think. That makes him. And he's now got a little bit of air before he's got to chase. He's chasing after Stefan Johansson once again. In the meantime, the front of that big gaggle from 3rd right up to 8th place is being caused, I think, by Keke Rosberg, who's obviously having to fight the handling of his Williams. He's not that happy with it, but he's creating this queue. But of course, at the moment, 3rd place would be no good to Lauda. So whilst it's a potential advantage if Rosberg is holding them up, it makes him difficult to pass, and he's still then, of course, got to get through and catch and pass Nigel Mansell.
Rosberg in 3rd position is 16 seconds now behind Mansell, and as James has pointed out, he's got the bunch behind him closing up, and Senna is soon going to be challenging Keke Rosberg for 3rd position, and Senna has got right behind him 5th Alboreto, 6th Johansson, and look at this, there is Senna, Rosberg, Alboreto, Johansson, and there Lauda. Lauda coming out now, he's going to go for Johansson, who just moves across that fraction to hold his line.
Yeah, I really think Lauda's got to show some more aggression now. Of course, it's easy for me to sit up here and talk like that, but we've seen Prost come late onto the brakes and pass from that sort of area. We saw Mansell do it, and Lauda is really going to have to stick his neck out a little bit at some stage, because he just hasn't got the straight line speed. He obviously has got a very difficult decision to make, because he obviously can't afford to risk getting himself out of the race. On the other hand, there's no point in being 3rd. So if he's going to get all the way up to 2nd, he's got to start doing it soon. Otherwise, the gap will be too big when he gets through that group to start chasing 2nd place. And he can't afford to let that gap get too big.
And you must have seen that now in 3rd position it's Ayrton Senna, and the queue being led by Keke Rosberg, is with Rosberg in 4th position, Alboreto 5th, Johansson 6th and Lauda 7th, and there are the 6th and 7th men, Stefan Johansson in the Tolman and Niki Lauda as Senna, Rosberg, Alboreto, and that is Michele Alboreto, who's finished 2nd in the 2 last Grand Prix in Italy and at the Nürburgring, goes through in his new M2 Ferrari. That is Stefan Johansson. He is in 6th position, and we are on lap 21 out of 70 in what is turning out to be a tremendously exciting and competitive Portuguese Grand Prix.
I should report that Nigel Mansell is still slowly but surely catching Alain Prost. He's closing that gap for the lead.
That caption says 7 seconds between Prost and Mansell. It is actually just a whisker now over 6 seconds. Nigel Mansell, driving a typically gritty and determined race, is closing on Prost, and I do not think that at this stage of the race, lap 21, that is because Prost is slowing down. And that must be Jacques. I can't see whether that's Jacques Lafitte's car or whether it can't be Rosberg's. He's out on the circuit, so Lafitte has been into the pits. Well, it is in the pits for tyres. Piquet, I remind you, is coming up through the field. He's now in 15th position. And on lap 22, as we look at Michele Alboreto with Johansson and Lauda right behind him, with Rosberg and Senna in front of him, with Patrick Tambay coming through, the order is Prost, Mansell, Senna, Rosberg, and Lauda tries again to get past Stefan Johansson, who's seeing Lauda big in his mirrors, moves across that fraction, which he's perfectly entitled to do. They've gone round turn 1, now into turn 2, into turn 3, which leads into the uphill section, which you are looking at now, which goes left at turn 4. Jacques Lafitte back in the race, running wide, and Niki Lauda, I think, flat spotted his tyres there.
Well, he was having a look down the inside, Stefan Johansson, and I think he just locked up the brakes a little puff. I doubt whether a little lock like that would flat spot the tyres or not bad enough to be a problem for him, one would hope. So, Lauda beginning to, and there's a little bit of liquid or something coming out of the back of Lauda's McLaren. It didn't look 100% healthy. We'll keep an eye on that. It was just sort of, yes, and you saw it then. And something is definitely coming out of the back of Niki's car. So we'll keep an eye on that. That may mean it's got a limited life remaining.
That is a danger signal because the McLaren team have had trouble with excessive water consumption in their V6 turbocharged tag engines. Let us hope it's not going to hit Niki Lauda again, as Rosberg coming towards us in 4th place, heading the Scarlet Ferrari, and that is Philip Streff. Now that is Philip Streff, I promise you. Number 33, Philip Streff, who I accused of spinning off before when it actually turned out to be Derek Warwick, has spun off. And it's still Prost with Mansell now slipping back a bit because the gap is 7.3 seconds. Prost must have got the message and speeded up a bit. It's Prost leading, Mansell 2nd, Senna 3rd. There's the 4th man. There's Alboreto 5th, Johansson 6th, and Niki Lauda 7th, almost in the points as Streff starts to tour home to the pits. If Niki Lauda can get past Johansson, which goodness knows he's trying hard enough to do, Little Leaf, as he's called, Stefan Johansson, with that very effective helmet design, is in 6th place, and his teammate Ayrton Senna in the other Tolman is still 4th.
Now, you saw that little trail of liquid come out of the back of Niki's car. It looked like the breather overflow pipe that it was coming from that hangs down over the back of the gearbox, but I'm doubtful as to whether that much should be coming out to be visible from the range that we're looking at. I mean, from the camera, through the camera, of course. But Niki's got plenty of problems, though, because even as and when he can claw his way past Stefan Johansson, he's well placed to have a look now. He's got Alboreto in front of him, and if we cast our minds back a fortnight, he just couldn't do anything about getting past Alboreto at the Nürburgring. So he's got some tough guys who are pretty quick in a straight line as well, which of course compounds the problem. I think Niki's going to have to find somewhere around the back of the circuit in one of these S's and have a little nip, like here, if he can dive inside suddenly, which he tried a couple of laps ago.
Alain Prost is currently leading the World Championship by 5.5 points if everybody finishes where they are now. As into the pits again comes Jacques Lafitte. Jacques Lafitte's driving his last race for the Williams Honda team before it is rumoured he returns to the Ligier team next year, and he's had a poor season indeed driving for the Didcot team, and although he'll undoubtedly be very sorry to leave Williams, he may feel happier psychologically as a Frenchman in a French team back with Ligier next year. Anyway, it is Prost leading, it's Mansell still second. The gap is increasing now between Prost and Mansell. Alain Prost is once again demonstrating his supreme dominance in Grand Prix racing, challenged only by his teammate Niki Lauda this year, because the gap is increasing. As Senna there third, Prost fourth, Alboreto fifth, Johansson sixth, and Alboreto, looking in his mirrors, sees Johansson, who moves across in front of Lauda, and again the Austrian fails to get through. These three are incredibly closely matched.
Yes, what made it very difficult for Niki then, of course, was that Johansson was also very close to Alboreto, and it's difficult to overtake when you've got two cars absolutely on top of each other in front of you. You really need the space to do them one at a time.
Imagine yourself sitting in one of these projectiles with something like 800 horsepower under your foot, doing 190, yes, 190 miles an hour down the straight, 150 and 160 miles an hour around several of the corners, down to 100 miles an hour for the slowest corner, with somebody right in front of you, somebody right behind you. You've got to stop the man behind you from getting past, and at the same time you've got to try and get ahead of the man in front. Senna, a puff of smoke from his Hart turbo engine, but that's not necessarily a problem. That's Alboreto, fifth position. And Keke Rosberg, that we accused of dropping back and was indeed doing so, is nevertheless holding on. It's Senna third, Rosberg fourth, Alboreto fifth, Johansson sixth. There's the seventh place man, Niki Lauda. Is he going to try again? Yes, he is. Is it possible, James, you know the tactics, that Lauda is feinting in exactly the same place with Johansson lap after lap, so that he can dive round the other side somewhere else?
No, I don't think so. I think he's getting out there having a look, but maybe he's not 100% happy with his brakes, because I really think that if Johansson's braking in the normal place, Niki could find a way to just leave it a bit later and then scrabble his way around onto the inside of the corner and slip through. I mean, he has really got to make his move soon, because if and when he can get past this group, there's already a 24-25 second gap from Senna in third place up to Nigel Mansell. So, and Mansell and Prost are having their own big battle up front. The gap's moving around by small amounts, and it's sort of going up and down, and it's fairly stable around about sort of between 6 and 8 seconds.
That was Thierry Boutsen walking in, obviously having parked his arrows somewhere. And behind Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell, that meteoric scrap, here it is, with Senna leading it in third position, with Lauda bringing up the rear in seventh place, and with only about 4 car lengths between them. Alboreto now is having to fight off Johansson. Alboreto, who is in fifth position, with Rosberg still in front of him fourth, Senna third, Mansell second, and Prost leading. Ferrari have got their act together much better in this race, although it is significant that René Arnoux is nowhere to be seen on the lap chart. Well, he's in 17th position and he's already been lapped, and Arnoux, who finished well up in the championship third last year, is going to finish well down, and that's Jonathan Palmer's car in the pit. So with Alio out of the race, with Palmer, who is going to be testing one of the Tolmans next week, with Roberto Moreno and Manfred Winkelhock. And you see there, Niki Lauda passing. So Niki Lauda has gained that place. And, or was it? No, it was one of the Acellas that Niki Lauda was taking. It must have been Ginzani who was in Lauda's way, and Lauda just managed to get, yeah, there it is. There is the Acela that has been lapped. And the race order now on lap 28 is still Prost leading. Mansell, who's again charging and has got the gap down to under 7 seconds. Second place. Senna is third. Alboreto is fourth, and now Alboreto has got, he's going to be taken by Lauda. And Lauda had taken Johansson, and with one move, or rather two very rapid moves, Niki Lauda is now up, watch him again, taking Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari, and Niki Lauda, by passing Johansson and Alboreto, is up into fourth position. And there is Derek Warwick. Yes, Derek Warwick out. It looks like another grisly race for Renault. Streff is out, Derek Warwick is out, picking up sand on his very hot tyres.
Well, things have really come alive now for Niki Lauda. There's those two places, not a moment too soon for him. And so Lauda is now chasing Ayrton Senna, who's the one person he's got left to deal with before he heads off the long chase. If he can get past Senna, catch and pass him, then he's got the long chase to Nigel Mansell, who's already well over 25 seconds clear of Senna's third place.
And the race order now on lap 29 with Alain Prost leading. Nigel Mansell second. Senna is in third place. Rosberg is in fourth position. And there is Lauda behind Rosberg in fifth place. So Lauda is now on 2 World Championship points. He started 3.5 points ahead of Alain Prost, who is currently on 9. So Lauda is starting to look good. And there he is. And the leaders are now up amongst the midfield men. They've passed the tail enders. Nelson Piquet has been into the pits. Nevertheless, he is in 13th position. And Niki Lauda fairly streaking away ahead of Alboreto. Prost leading. Mansell second. Senna third. Lauda fourth now. And for fourth position, of course, you get 3 points. So Lauda has now got 6 points between himself and Prost in this race. And so that means to say that Prost is leading the championship by 2.5 points. It's getting very, very tight indeed. There is the leader. Alain Prost, number 7, driving in his 73rd Grand Prix, compared with Niki Lauda's 157th.
Yes, a magnificent job Prost is doing. Qualified well again. He's leading the race comfortably and sensibly, and of course it's a difficult task for him because that's all he can do. That's a 100% job if he can keep it there till the end of the race, and there's nothing he can do about the championship result because it's up to Lauda what he can do behind. Lauda, of course, while Prost stays out front, has got to finish second to win the championship, which in that case, if he could do that, he'd win it by half a point. Couldn't get closer than that.
Well, I can tell you that Stefan Johansson is in the pits. And it looks to me, with the nose off the car as we're looking at it, and you see Alain Prost go through, as though the Tolman of Stefan Johansson is definitely in race retiring trouble. As you look at the second place man, Nigel Mansell. Now, we haven't seen Mansell for a long time. Senna is still in third position, and Niki Lauda behind him, ahead of Michele Alboreto. There's Prost. There's the Ligier of Andrea de Cesaris, and we are on lap 31 now. As Lauda goes past the Williams and he is definitely in 4th position. So now, on lap 31, Keke Rosberg has been pushed down by Niki Lauda. There's the replay of the Finn who led the Portuguese Grand Prix in the opening stages for the first 8 laps. And now, with Prost leading, Mansell second, Senna in 3rd position, that is the time gap. But really, the time gap doesn't matter too much to Niki Lauda, because if he can continue his progress through the field, for instance, if he can catch Senna and then get within sparring distance of Nigel Mansell, he could do what he needs to do, and that is literally to follow Alain Prost round, no matter what the gap. Now, there was Senna 3rd. There is Lauda in 4th position ahead of Rosberg 5th, with Alboreto in 6th position, and Niki Lauda is gaining, no doubt about that, on Ayrton Senna, the young Brazilian in the Tolman Hart. Watch the progress of Niki Lauda.
Yes, remember, of course, that Niki had quite a lot of difficulty passing the sister car of Stefan Johansson, the other Tolman, and the Tolman is certainly very competent for straight line speed. So the one difference being, of course, that when Niki was following Johansson, Johansson was in turn following Alboreto and others, and therefore getting a bit of a tow himself, which would have helped his straight line speed. So it may, hopefully for Niki, just be just a little bit easier to deal with Senna when he gets there, on the basis that Senna will have clear air in front of him and no help from a tow.
You can see how hard Lauda is trying on lap 32, and the championship gap is now only 1.5 points between this man in 4th position, Niki Lauda, and Alain Prost, the race leader. Because if Alain Prost won this race, he would get 71.5 points. Lauda is currently in 4th position on 70 points. And if he gets up another place, it's going to be almost even Steven, and he's now up with, that looks like Manfred Winkelhock as opposed to Nelson Piquet. It was, and since I haven't mentioned Winkelhock before, I should tell you that Theo Fabi had to sadly return to Italy due to the death of his father, as a result of which Manfred Winkelhock was most dramatically brought into the Brabham team. There is Senna, who is 3rd. And he has now Niki Lauda right behind him in 4th position. And if Niki Lauda can get up in it, there's Lauda trying, and Senna holding him off in the new distinctively liveried Tolman. Ayrton Senna, who finished 2nd at Monaco in his first season of Grand Prix racing, now engaged in a wheel-to-wheel almost battle with Niki Lauda for 3rd position. So the British built and powered Tolman Hart with its 4-cylinder engine against Niki Lauda, and he's going through, is he? No, as they go into that long looping turn 6, Senna holds him off.
Well, he certainly had a good long look. He really tried to get inside, but Senna managed to stay light on his brake pedal for long enough. But I think if Niki can get into the right position as they come onto the main straight, that's where he's going to do it with an outbrake at the end of the straight.
François Hainaut in the Ligier out of the Portuguese Grand Prix, and up at the front the battle continues. This battle between Senna on the right in the Tolman, Lauda on the left, and they're battling for 3rd position. Still Prost first and Lauda second, and Lauda is going through this time, surely. He's got the line, and yes indeed, as they go into turn 1 at the end of lap 33, Lauda is up into 3rd place, only Mansell between him and his teammate Prost.
Yes, Lauda really going then. Well, they're showing us the wrong bit, because he made this overtaking manoeuvre by his speed through the corner onto the straight, and in fact Lauda was way quicker than Senna through that corner. He left enough air between them before the corner so that he didn't have to lift coming through it, and he really just swept past him on the straight, as we saw then. So, battle is really joined now. Niki Lauda up into 3rd place, but he's some 35, 36 seconds behind Nigel Mansell, so he's got a long, long chase.
And that's the race leader, Alain Prost. His teammates and the only man that could deny him the world champion, now 2 places behind him.
And of course, there is one other person who can deny him the championship right now, and that is Nigel Mansell, because Mansell has got a bit closer to Alain Prost, is now only 5 seconds behind him, and of course, these gaps now, they're in traffic and lapping back markers, so the gaps sort of tend to yo-yo a little bit as the leader gets held up a bit, and then he's off and running, and the chap behind gets held up a bit subsequently. But of course, remember that the leader is always the first person to arrive when you're being lapped, so if anybody's not going to notice or be ready to be lapped, it's usually the leader who gets the worst treatment. Once he's gone past, then drivers are looking out for the next ones to come through. So Lauda, of course, will be in 2 minds. He'll be praying on the one hand for Mansell to slow down and get into his sights where he can catch him. On the other hand, if he finds it difficult to catch Mansell, he'll be cheering like mad for Mansell to get a move on, get up behind Prost and try and pass him that way. But certainly it's a magnificent drive from Nigel Mansell, and probably one of the best of his career, the best placings. And as Prost just pulling out, overtaking another back marker, carving his way through the traffic.
And I've got the watch running to give you the gap between Prost, the leader, and Nigel Mansell in 2nd place, and the answer is 9.45 seconds. So despite the traffic, the man that you're looking at, number 7, Alain Prost, on lap 35, which is exactly half distance in this 70-lap race, is easing away from Nigel Mansell, who presumably is having more trouble than the Frenchman in the traffic conditions. Alain Prost leads on lap 35. Nigel Mansell 2nd. Niki Lauda in 3rd position, ahead of Ayrton Senna in 4th place. Rosberg is 5th and Alboreto is 6th. Then it's Torbe 7th, De Angelis 8th, and De Angelis is the last man not to have been lapped, because Riccardo Patrese, who is in 9th position, has been lapped by Alain Prost. You just saw it happen. And Alain Prost, therefore, has lapped everybody up to 8th position, Elio De Angelis, and certainly at the moment looks as though he's on his way to an incredible 7th Grand Prix win of 1984, which would almost certainly clinch him the World Championship. But if Niki Lauda can get up to that 2nd position, it wouldn't. And as James says, the man who is denying Lauda the championship, if the race goes on as it is now, is not only Alain Prost, but also Nigel Mansell, who you see coming towards you now in the distinctive black and gold GPS Team Lotus car. Now, where is Niki Lauda? The answer is a long, long way back, because the gap is something like 36 seconds between Mansell, who is 2nd, and Lauda, who is 3rd. Lauda is 3 seconds ahead of the 4th place man, Senna. And that will be Stefan Johansson's Tolman. Indeed it is. So Johansson is back in the race. There's Nelson Piquet, who's actually quietly got up to 12th position. As you see, René Arnoux' Ferrari about to be lapped again by number 8 that we are looking at now. Niki Lauda coming through to complete his 36th lap, and he does so. So it is Prost leading, Mansell 2nd. In 3rd position, Lauda. In 4th position, Senna. In 5th place, it is Rosberg. And in 6th place, Michele Alboreto.
I think, realistically speaking, that Mansell and Prost are really going too quickly for Lauda to make any real impression on them. This 36-second gap is too big, particularly as there's traffic around and everything. So I think Niki's got to just keep pressing on as fast as he can to try and bring them under pressure, and hope that pressure can put one or other of them out, or alternatively that, of course, that Mansell can catch and possibly pass Prost. That, of course, would seal the result for Lauda and win him the championship. But I really don't think he's... there we just a little replay of Lauda lapping Arnoux, who in fact leaves space for him and behaves quite gentlemanly.
There are several things to say about the cars. The first is to remind ourselves that in this comparatively hot condition, and on a very tricky course in terms of accelerating and braking. Fuel consumption is suspect. I'm not going to be at all surprised to see several cars running out of fuel in the closing stages of the race. The second thing is that this is tough on tyres as well because of the braking and acceleration. And the third is that as far as drivers are concerned, it's a very demanding race. It's not all that long compared with some of them at 185 miles. All the races have to be less than 200 miles or less. So this is not all that long a race, but the circuit with its demanding twists and turns as Jacques Lafitte comes into the pits for the third time, and its braking and acceleration is going to be tough on drivers. So Niki Lauda now, the gap between himself and Mansell is remaining constant, and it's a pity we're not seeing more of Nigel Mansell, because in his last race for JPS Team Lotus he's driving superbly. The highest position that Mansell has had is third position. That's to say, in his racing career, that is. He's had 5 third places and 4 fourth places, but he's never yet finished second, and he's certainly never won, despite leading in Dallas and despite leading at Monaco. So there is Lauda. In the background, Arnoux, who he has lapped. You saw it happen at the halfway point of the previous lap show. That shows you how much faster the Austrian Niki Lauda there is going than the Frenchman René Arnoux in the Ferrari. And Arnoux' form has been pretty poor in the latter half of this season, and Michele Alboreto has shown himself to be the better driver in the Ferrari team in the second half of this 1984 season. But Prost leading still, Mansell second still. The story of the race is now going to be, can Niki Lauda catch and get past Mansell? If he does, he will win the championship. Because if Prost won the championship, he would have 71.5 points. If Lauda finished second, he would have 72, and that would give us the closest championship finish in the history of the World Championship Series, and that is Nigel Mansell. Now we're with the black and gold car with the distinctive red, white and blue helmet of Nigel Mansell, number 12, 30 years old, from Port Erin in the Isle of Man. He's coming up behind the Osella. It looked like Gartner's Osella as opposed to Ginzani's Osella, and that has got Mauro Baldi's car, the Spirit Heart, in front of it. Mauro Baldi is in 16th position. It's Joe Gartner behind him in 17th place, and the fastest man on the circuit, as you see, Alain Prost, is some 1 minute 23 seconds, which is about 1.3 seconds off the pole position time of Nelson Piquet. And in one move, Mansell gets a colossal puff of dust, not smoke.
Yeah, I think that's probably fire extinguisher stuff that's been used on that car. One interesting point about fuel consumption here is we may, I think they just put some stuff down on the mess that car had left. So that's all it was, just his tyres kicking up the dust. But this circuit, of course, a lot of work had been done here, and the circuit was covered in a lot of mud from contractors' vehicles driving on and off it. And in fact, you can see it when they were breaking down the inside at just at this point we're at now, earlier in the race. And as a result of which, the track has got steadily quicker all weekend as it's cleaned up. Now, the track is definitely quicker today than it was yesterday. Now, the quicker the track is, the higher the fuel consumption goes. So if they continue to go along at this breakneck pace, there are going to be a few question marks around people finishing around of petrol. That's one of the Williamses parked there beside the track. I can't see whose it is from this angle. There's no driver to identify. He's gone. Off on his way home. But this could well be a problem. And if it becomes a problem, I think McLaren's are pretty confident that their fuel is okay. Their engine is very economical, very efficient, and I'm quite sure they will have left plenty of margin. However, I'm not so sure that Mansell will have been sent out with a big margin. Incidentally, that was Rosberg's car that we saw parked beside the track then. He was running in 6th place, so it was a fine drive by Rosberg against quite a lot of difficulties. The car really handling quite in quite a difficult fashion, but it was all to nothing because he stopped, appears to have broken down. So there we are. So Niki Lauda has in fact made quite a bit of progress on Mansell. He's now under 30 seconds behind him, but I still don't think it's going to be enough. So it's really a question of keeping the pressure on and hoping that Mansell keeps going absolutely flat out, chasing Prost, either with a view to passing him, but that's now getting a bit difficult because Mansell, with the aid of the traffic, has dropped back quite a lot on Prost now and is really losing touch. So what Niki doesn't want to happen is, of course, for Mansell to ease up and come back towards him gently, and thereby conserving fuel for a final sprint late in the race.
Nigel Mansell there, number 12, one of these depressing people who seems to do everything terribly well. A trained engineer, qualified engineer, a karate expert. I think he's a scratch golfer. He's a qualified pilot, and his great hobby in life is fishing, and he certainly gets plenty of that at Port Erin in the Isle of Man where he lives. And he's driving a magnificent race because he's absolutely on his own, as you can see, with Prost some 16 seconds ahead of him, with Lauda some 30 seconds behind him. There's the race leader, Alain Prost, in the Marlboro McLaren, on his way to his 7th Grand Prix win of 1984. And if my memory serves me right, that will equal the record which has stood so long of Jim Clark in the Lotus. But of course, and this is no discredit to Alain Prost, Jim Clark, in winning 7 Grand Prix in one season, won a much higher percentage of races because in those days there were not 16 Grand Prix in a World Championship Series as there are now. Nevertheless, for Prost, there he is. To win 7 Grand Prix would be a magnificent achievement, particularly when you consider that Niki Lauda would have won 5, and thereby the McLaren team would have won 12 out of the 16 races. Prost then leading. Lap 43. Alain Prost leading. Nigel Mansell in 2nd position, some 30 seconds ahead of Niki Lauda 3rd. Ayrton Senna in 4th place. Michele Alboreto in 5th position. Patrick Tambay 6th of the champion.
Prost hat Derek Warwick überrundet. Warwick liegt an 13. Stelle nach 2 Drehern und einem Boxenstopp mit nur einer Runde Rückstand. Ja, aber Mansell wird es langsamer. Mansell 17 Sekunden hinter Prost und 27 Sekunden nur noch vor Niki Lauda. Prost fährt 1,24,4 in dieser 43. Runde. Mansell 1,25,1. Alle anderen Ereignisse werden ja überschattet, überstrahlt vom Titelduell zwischen Lauda und Prost. Ich sage Ihnen trotzdem, Rosberg ausgeschieden wegen Motorschaden und Butzen ausgeschieden wegen gerissener Halbachse. Das spannendste Weltmeisterschaftsfinale, an das ich mich erinnern kann. Ein Platz fehlt Niki Lauda zum Weltmeistertitel, obwohl ja auch die letzten Finalrennen recht spannend waren. Zweimal in Las Vegas, einmal in Kyalami, Dreher von Michele Alboreto. Retourgang, den müssen alle Formel-1-Fahrzeuge haben, weil sie ja in einer gefährlichen Situation sein können. Alboreto nimmt noch sehr viel Schmutz und Dreck auf die Piste mit, ist aber wieder im Rennen. Alboreto hat damit seinen 5. Platz, glaube ich, gerade noch vor Patrick Tambay gerettet. Chiva und Johansson vor Niki Lauda. Chiva hat einen sehr langen Boxenhalt, Johansson einen etwas kürzeren und 2 Runden Rückstand. Chiva, Johansson, Lauda. ...26,2 Sekunden zwischen Mansell und Lauda. Wir sind in der 45. Runde. Runden noch zu fahren. Überrundet nach Patrese ist auch Tambay. 6 nur noch in der gleichen Runde. Prost, Mansell, Lauda, Senna, Alboreto nach seinem Dreher und De Angelis. Eine Runde zurück, Tambay, Patrese, Winkelhock, De Cesaris, Piquet, Arnoux. Dann 2 Runden Rückstand, Warwick, Berger 14., Gardner 15., dann Streif, Johansson, Baldi, Ginzani und Lafitte. Johansson gegen Chiva. Lauda gegen Chiva. Lauda gegen Johansson. Also da hat man wieder mal gesehen, mit wie viel Herz der Niki Lauda heuer Grand Prix-Rennen fährt. Da hat es viele Leute gegeben, die gesagt haben, Lauda, ein Professor, er fährt immer nur mit äußerster Berechnung, ohne Risiko. Und jetzt haben sie gesehen, was Niki Lauda zwischen diesen Wagen von Johansson und von Chiva gemacht hat. Akrobatische Wagenbeherrschung, rechts, links, sowas, wie wir es bis jetzt eigentlich nur von Keke Rosberg gesehen haben. Aber das war ja das Schwierige in diesem Jahr für Niki Lauda, sich so zu überwinden, dass man nicht nur mit Hirn, sondern auch mit sehr viel Herz, mit sehr viel Mut zum Risiko und mit vor allem mit sehr viel Freude am Risiko Autorennen fährt. Und das hat Niki Lauda ja von Saisonbeginn an gesagt, das wird notwendig sein, um Alain Prost in der Weltmeisterschaft zu besiegen. Den stärksten Gegner, den er im Kampf um die Weltmeisterschaft je gehabt hat. Und jetzt sehen Sie noch einmal, was da los war. Johansson, Lauda. Aber der Rückstand auf Mansell 27,9 Sekunden. Lauda müsste mehr als 1 Sekunde pro Runde jetzt aufholen. Ja, Mansell, wie schnell fährt er? 1,24,5. Prost 1,24,4. Damit pendelt sich der Abstand Prost-Mansell wieder bei 17 Sekunden ein. Wie schaut es mit den Reifen aus? Mansell hat amerikanische Reifen.
Lauda now coming up behind the Ligier of, it looks like, Andrea De Cesaris. Very difficult to tell him and Eno apart. And Michele Alboreto is still ahead of Elio De Angelis, 5th and 6th, with Patrick Tambay 7th.
Now it's got terrible traffic problems, and the trouble is they're all fighting amongst themselves as well at the same time, which is making it very awkward for him. He just desperately needs to get clear of all that traffic.
Lauda jetzt wieder im dichten Pulk. Das heißt, der Österreicher ist aufgehalten im Augenblick und gebremst auf seinem Weg nach vorn. An De Cesaris vorbei. Vor ihm Jo Gardner. Weiter vorne Winkelhock und dann Gerhard Berger. Laudas letzte Rundenzeit 1,26,9. Prost war schneller mit 1,24,1. Ui, da weiß ich nicht, ob Gardner jetzt wirklich in den Rückspiegel geschaut hat. Puh, das war aber knapp. Und als Folge 49 Sekunden Differenz zwischen Prost und Lauda. Missverständnis war das jetzt zwischen den beiden Österreichern.
Yes, unfortunately that gaggle of back markers has cost Niki a good 5 seconds on the road. He's dropped back his positions relative to Prost and Mansell by some 5 seconds roughly at a time when he really didn't need that. It was crucial that things were moving the other way. So things are looking now as if Niki's going to have to depend on fate rather than anything he can do. I don't think he can reasonably expect to catch Nigel Mansell, and it doesn't look as if Nigel Mansell is going to catch Alain Prost. So it's a question of whether the very hard race that Mansell has put in has taken too much of petrol out of his Lotus or rubber off its tires or whatever.
Kommen gesehen, er hat trotzdem rübergezogen. Dass man das auch anders machen kann, wird Ihnen gleich Gerhard Berger zeigen. Bravo, Gerhard Berger, drüben geblieben, linke Hand hochgehoben und Lauda gezeigt, überhol mich auf der linken Seite, so macht man das. Prost hinter Michele Alboreto. Einmal in dieser Saison hat es schon Probleme für Niki Lauda gegeben, als er in der Windlock herfuhr. Allerdings hatte der Deutsche damals überhaupt keine Schuld. Sein Motor ist explodiert und Niki Lauda ist, ich glaube in Kyalami war das, Niki Lauda ist durch eine Rauchwolke hindurchgefahren. Nichts ist passiert, Lauda ist damals sehr gut durchgekommen und er hat ja auch in Kyalami zum ersten Mal mit einem Turbo gewonnen. Prost, Mansell, Lauda. Sollte es bei diesem Stand bleiben, Prost Erster und Lauda Dritter, dann wäre der Franzose mit 1,5, mit 1,5 Punkten Vorsprung Weltmeister. Aber noch dauert dieser Grand Prix von Portugal. Wir sind in der 50. Runde. Noch 21 Runden.
You're watching the race leader, Alain Prost, who is 18 seconds coming up behind René Arnoux to lap him again. 18 seconds ahead of Nigel Mansell, who is 32 seconds ahead of Niki Lauda, who lost so much time getting through the traffic. Ayrton Senna is still in 4th position and will be the next man to be lapped by Alain Prost, who has already lapped, and you've just seen it, the 5th place man, Michele Alboreto. 6th, De Angelis. 7th, Torbay. 8th, Patrese. 9th, Winkelhock in his first race in the Brabham BMW. Winkelhock, who is testing for Tolman here in Portugal next week, and will obviously be anxious too to get the 2nd seat in the Brabham team, which Farby has vacated, although we don't know whether he's going to retire from racing at the present moment, following the sad death of his father. And in 10th position, Andrea De Cesaris. The race leader, Alain Prost, marching round this Estoril circuit, which is a very, very great credit to the Portuguese. It was last used for a Formula 2 race in 1977. It has had to have a great deal of resurfacing and safety work done to it, but the basic configuration has proved to be excellent, and one must sadly say a sad contrast to the allegedly £21 million Nürburgring circuit in the Eifel Mountains, on which the European Grand Prix was held 2 weeks ago. So now Lauda passes the second of the two Ferraris, Prost passes, I'm sorry, the second of the two Ferraris, that of René Arnoux.
Well, the one little ray of slightly good news for Niki Lauda at the moment is that apart from one Alfa Romeo upon whose tail he's sitting right now to lap, he's got pretty much a completely clear road in front of him to Nigel Mansell, so he won't have any more back marks to deal with, or certainly not for some time. On the other hand, he's got a very large gap in less than 20 laps to go. He's got a gap of very nearly 30 seconds, and that's going to be too much to pull unless Mansell has trouble. But I would think that Niki certainly should keep the pressure on as hard as he can all the way. After all, it's no good to him coming third anyway. There's no harm in breaking his car in his efforts, if that's what he's going to do, or risking running out of fuel, but he's really got to chase pressurised Mansell as much as he possibly can.
You can see from the caption that the gap between Mansell and Lauda is 30 seconds to the nearest full second, with Senna still fourth, Alboreto still fifth but lapped, De Angelis still sixth, Torbay seventh, Patrese eighth, Winkelhock ninth, Piquet now in 10th position, 1 lap behind, but running well. De Cesaris in 11th position, and Arnoux is in 12th position. Then Derek Warwick disappeared from the lap charts altogether. There's something exciting happening because the crowd is going berserk in front of me, and I'm sorry to say I cannot tell you what it is. James?
I think Mansell's in trouble, and I think Lauda might have passed him. I can't see it. I saw Lotus go off the circuit and go straight on down at the hairpin now. Now, which Lotus is that? He's now regained the circuit. He went straight on the downhill hairpin, but I can't understand. It may... Well, we'll wait and see when they come round.
Yes, let's not guess at it. It's absolutely critical, because if it was Mansell, it means that Lauda's in second place, and he is. He is. Niki Lauda on lap 53 out of 70 has moved up into second position, and in doing so has taken the lead in the World Championship. He has to keep running.
Well, I don't know what happened then, because Lauda had come round on Mansell's tail, so I think Mansell must have had a spin, got going again, and there is Mansell cruising round, and he then went straight on at another corner, so something must have gone a bit awry with his car, I would imagine. However, a major turn up, and there is Alain Prost, and what a terrible blow that must be for him, because as things stand now, Niki Lauda is going to be world champion for the 3rd time, and I think Prost will, I mean, really the fairest result would be a shared championship, but that doesn't happen, of course. And there goes Nigel Mansell limping in. He's got blood in his tires. And we'll have a look and see what they do to the car when he comes in, because I think he must have already had one spin, because Lauda had been on his tail as they went past around the back of the circuit. He then overtook him, and after that, Mansell it was who went straight on at the downhill hairpin. So, a sorry and sad end for Nigel. He's going that slowly that I would think there's something wrong with the car, because otherwise he'd be whizzing in to change tires.
Yes, well, so there is Niki Lauda. Well, this is an incredible development, and it just shows you that in Grand Prix racing you can never take anything for granted. What we failed to spot in the excitement of Mansell's disappearance, of course, was that Niki Lauda had also got past Ayrton Senna, so Lauda now in second position behind Alain Prost, and since that means that Prost is on 9 points, Lauda is on 6 points, it means to say that Lauda, who started this race 3.5 points ahead of Alain Prost, is, as James rightly says, on his way to his 3rd World Championship in his 157th Grand Prix, a quite incredible achievement. He first won the championship in 1975, then he won it again in 1977, 7 years ago, and that was 1 year after his dreadful fiery accident at the Nürburgring in the Ferrari, and that it's terribly difficult to tell whether, I was going to say whether it was Streff or Warwick. The caption told it was Warwick, and judging from the distinctive way that he was walking away, it was indeed Derek Warwick, which means to say that only 1 out of the 3 Renaults which started, Torbay, Warwick and Streff, is left in this Portuguese Grand Prix, and it is Patrick Torbay who is in 6th position, 1 lap behind the race leader, Alain Prost, who is followed by the man you are looking at, the wily Niki Lauda, who was winding Alain Prost up in the Marlborough hospitality unit this morning. He was saying to Alain Prost, jokingly, I emphasize, you should let me win. I'm an old man. I haven't got much racing left in me. I've won 2 championships already. I would like to go out winning a 3rd. And Alain Prost was ignoring this pathetic story from Niki Lauda. But it looks as though Lauda is going to be world champion. a measure of the dominance of Alain Prost in terms of speed, but it's a measure too of the determination of Niki Lauda, who, let us not forget, has come up from 11th on the grid to 2nd in the race. And it must be a very, very deflated, disheartened and depressed Alain Prost in the lead, knowing that drive his heart out, though he has been doing, it's not going to avail him. And for the 2nd year in succession, if the race finishes with himself and Lauda in their current positions, he's going to lose the World Championship and finish 2nd. He's been trying for that World Championship for 4 years now, in the Renault team and now in the McLaren team, and it looks as though the championship is going to be won by half a point for the first time in the history of the series, which began in 1950, with Lauda on 72 points and Prost on 71.5 points. And if you wonder why the half points have crept into it, you will recall that the appallingly wet Monaco Grand Prix, which was the 6th in the series of 16, was stopped short, as a result of which only half points were awarded. And Alain Prost, who won the Monaco Grand Prix, got for that win 4.5 points. Niki Lauda then on his way. He is on lap 57. It is a 70-lap race. His problem now is simply to keep the car going. Senna is 3rd. 4 points for Ayrton Senna. If he finishes where he is, he will be leaving the Toleman team on a very high note indeed. Michele Alboreto is in 4th place, and well in the points again for Ferrari, because Alboreto, who won in Belgium, was 2nd in the last Grand Prix, but won at Monza. He was 2nd at the Nürburgring. He had a 3rd place in Austria, and it's going to ensure him a 4th place in the World Championship. Indeed, with Elio De Angelis, and I'm just checking, yes, I think De Angelis, who's currently in 5th position behind Alboreto, will just maintain his 3rd position in the World Championship behind Lauda and Prost, although it's going to be a very close thing.
Noch tun muss, die letzten Runden in diesem Grand Prix von Portugal, den McLaren auf der Straße zu halten, ins Ziel kommen, den 2. Platz zu retten, dann kann ihm nichts mehr passieren. Ladedruck, wie gesagt, 2,2. Lauda wird sicher gescheit genug sein, um den Ladedruck wieder etwas zurückzudrehen, um das Risiko weiter zu verringern. Die Takt-Turbomotoren, die Porsche gebaut hat, fast das ganze Jahr über gleich. Nur ist man ab dem französischen Grand Prix in Dijon mit der Verdichtung etwas zurückgegangen. Hoffentlich wird der Sprint nicht allzu knapp. In Montreal hat man Niki Lauda aus der McLaren-Box, als er hinter Nelson Piquet Zweiter war, signalisiert, More Boost, das heißt Ladedruck erhöhen. Lauda hat sich in diesem Augenblick gedacht, wieso weiß die Box, wie viel Sprint ich noch habe, und hat den Ladedruck justament zurückgedreht, und das war seine Rettung, denn am Ende hatte Lauda gerade noch 4 Liter Sprit im Tank. Zuletzt auf dem Nürburgring Prost-Sieger mit 5 Litern, Lauda hatte noch 6 Liter Sprit an Bord. Erlaubt sind heuer ja nur 220 Liter, das heißt, die Konstrukteure reizen diese 220 Liter nicht bis zum letzten Tropfen aus, weil sollte man bei der Auslieferung der Tanks draufkommen, dass 220,1 Liter Fassungsvermögen des Tanks beträgt, dann würde das unweigerlich disqualifizieren.
Let's go live now again to James Hunt and Murray Walker.
Yes, indeed. Nigel Mansell, after driving an absolutely magnificent race and looking as though for the first time he was going to achieve a 2nd place in his last drive for the JPS Team Lotus team, had brake trouble, and on lap 54 we suddenly had the crowd standing in front of us. A roar of approval went up because Niki Lauda is very much the man that they like here, and it meant that sadly Nigel Mansell was out. Lauda was passed. You're looking at Lauda now, who's being passed by Stefan Johansson, but I suspect, and I emphasize suspect, that is because Lauda is now driving a very tactical race.
Yes, in fact, he slowed right up, and so has Alain Prost. They've taking it quite easy. In the meantime, Nelson Piquet, who had that spin on the first lap of the race, has come right the way through and is threatening to get into the points. He's up to 7th place. But the two McLarens, Lauda has some 20 seconds to spare on Ayrton Senna, who's in 3rd place, and I'm quite sure that he'll ease up as much as he can, let Senna get a bit closer, as Alain Prost is indeed doing at the front. The two McLarens certainly won't want to overtake each other. There's no point in doing that. All they've got to do, or Niki has to do, is to keep Senna at bay, and he's got that nice cushion.
And once again, it looks as though we're going to see this incredibly successful, crushingly dominant McLaren team of Prost and Lauda finishing 1st and 2nd in a Grand Prix. It will be the 12th McLaren win out of 16 races, and there's never, ever been constructor dominance of this magnitude before in the history of the World Championship Series. Alain Prost is still some 40 seconds ahead of the race, 2nd place man, Niki Lauda, and we're looking at him now, and that is an indication of the speed superiority of Prost, but it's not going to have been enough. And it must be a very sad, deflated, disheartened, depressed Frenchman in the leading car's cockpit, because even a 7th victory in a year to equal the record of Jim Clark years ago in the Lotus is going to be no consolation for Prost, who's now got the Brabham BMW behind him, because that victory will not have been enough to win him the World Championship. If Lauda can finish in 2nd position, he's going to win the World Championship for the 3rd time in his career by the closest ever margin in the history of the series, by half a point, because he would have 72 points to Prost 71.5, and the reason for the half points, of course, is that the appallingly rain-shortened Monaco Grand Prix resulted in only half points being given to everybody in the first 6. The winner, Alain Prost, only got 4.5 points instead of the usual 9. And you see now how much, too, Alain Prost has slowed down to ensure reliability, because there is the Ferrari of René Arnoux unlapping itself. Prost lapped Arnoux for the 2nd time a few laps ago, and the race order then on lap 61 in this 70-lap Portuguese Grand Prix, a most enormous success from the point of view of the circuit, the quality of the racing, the severity of the circuit, is Alain Prost leading his teammate Niki Lauda, who is on his way to his 3rd World Championship, by 40 seconds. Lauda is 17 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna in the Toleman, who is some 16 seconds ahead of the 4th place man Michele Alboreto. 5th is Elio De Angelis in the JPS, who has been lapped. 6th is Tombay. 7th is Piquet, who's really flying. And you can see now that Elio De Angelis is about to unlap himself from Alain Prost. And in 8th position is Riccardo Patrese. 9th is Manfred Winkelhock, going well in his first drive in the Brabham BMW. 10th is Andrea de Cesaris. 11th is René Arnoux, who we have just seen. 12th is Stefan Johansson in the Toleman, who is now 2 laps adrift. And there have been a lot of retirements.
Disappointing for Alain Prost. He's done everything he could today, on the day, and he's out there winning the race, and things have worked out behind him in such a way that as of this moment, Lauda, if they both hold position, of course, is going to win the championship. But I think, if anything, he'll be regretting 1 or 2 errors he's made early in the year, particularly in Dallas, where he spun off almost within sight of the end of the race, certainly after 2/3 distance, when he was leading with a little lead, didn't even have to win that race, wasn't under any pressure, other than the fact that, of course, the conditions there were difficult. The track was breaking up, but other people didn't do it. And, of course, again in Austria, where he hit oil, again, he had mitigating circumstances, but once again, the Piquet and Lauda, who were right with him at the time, didn't go off. So that is really, he seems to be a bit jinxed for Alain Prost, but on the other hand, he has made some of these mistakes himself, and it's the third year running that he's been right up there for the championship and not quite made it, and really that must be a little bit disheartening. However, there's plenty of future for him yet, and I'm quite sure he'll be fighting back next year, and he's really done, by and large, a very good season. It's just these funny little mistakes, but I don't think he's going to make them in the future. I think he's probably got the message by now, but it must be absolutely bitterly disappointing for him. Niki, of course, has still got to get the car to the finish in one piece, but McLaren's have been pretty good at staying in one piece this year, and he's taking it very easily to conserve the car, watching only Senna, who's now about 15 seconds behind him, so that's still a comfortable cushion. And if he can just get it round these last few laps, then Niki will win again at the expense of Prost. But at the same time, Prost's had a marvellous season. It must be a bit galling to win 7 Grand Prix in a season, equaling the all-time record, and still not win the championship. But then, c'est la vie, as they say.
Niki Lauda has got to be terribly careful. He will know, because he will have had pit signals from Steve Nichols, his race engineer, telling him that he's in second position and what the gap is between himself and Prost. And what he must not do under any circumstances now is to get fouled up with tail-enders or midfield men that he's lapping and risk being pushed off the circuit. That would be bitter gall indeed to lose the championship under those circumstances. He's now up with Patrick Tambay in the Renault and indeed goes past him. And Tambay is in 6th position and had already been lapped. So, by Prost, that is. And Niki Lauda then is now 28 seconds behind Prost. It's quite obvious that Prost has backed off, or is backing off, a lot more than Lauda, because the gap was 40 seconds not so very long ago between Prost, the leader, and Niki Lauda in second place. It's now down to 28. Lauda is gaining fast. He can see Nelson Piquet behind him. That may be worrying him, because there is the Brabham BMW of the reigning world champion, because until the last few laps of the Portuguese Grand Prix have been reeled off, the world champion is still the second of these two drivers, Nelson Piquet in the Brabham BMW, who achieved his championship in the last race of 1984 in South Africa by beating, ironically enough, Alain Prost, who is going to have been beaten for the World Championship here in the last race of 1984. So the 1983 champion chasing the 1984 champion designate, Niki Lauda. And Prost is now 25 seconds ahead, and a great puff of smoke from... I missed it. Oh, it's one of the Ocellos. It's one of the Ocellos. And my goodness, it really has blown up in the biggest possible way. It's Ginzani's Ocella, and Piquet ahead of Patrick Tambay is going very quickly indeed. I'm sure that Nelson Piquet is the fastest man on the circuit, because in passing Patrick Tambay, he's now up into the points. Nelson Piquet is now 6th, having had an appalling start. And you can see the Ginzani's Ocella, which has been rapidly pulled off the circuit. And the Portuguese officials have done extremely well here. They have not had a Formula One Grand Prix to contend with since 1960, when it was won, not at this circuit, but it was won by Sterling Moss. And they haven't had a race of any magnitude here for 7 years. So they've done extremely well to get the circuit into the condition it's in and to be able to police it as well as they have, with marshals and firemen and all the other officials that are needed at a World Championship Grand Prix. And now we look at Alain Prost, who is closing up on Elio De Angelis, who is in 5th position behind Michele Alboreto. De Angelis is going to finish third in the World Championship. A long, long gap, though, between himself and what looks like being the second-place man in the championship, who is right behind him in the race, Alain Prost, and we are on lap 66. In a race which has had all sorts of excitement, let's cast our minds back over it, and I remind you that it was started with a quite magnificent charge by Niki Rosberg, and there's the dead car park. That's the Osella of Ginzani having joined Bootson's arrows of the car in front of it, which I missed, to be honest. And however, there's the race leader. You can't miss him on this circuit. There's a large crowd, but not an enormous crowd. And the gap now between Prost and Lauda is down to 23 seconds with 5 laps to go, including the 4 laps now, because Prost has just completed his 66th lap in this 70-lap race, and the gap between himself and Lauda is 24.186 seconds. 20 seconds between Lauda second and Senna third, 6 seconds between Senna third and Alboreto fourth, and as you saw, some 37 seconds between the next 2 men. And De Angelis, who's driven superbly and extremely reliably in his JPS Renault-powered car, on his way to yet another points win position, of which he's had so many. De Angelis has had 4 third places, 3 fourth places, 2 fifths, and a 6th, plus a 7th just outside the points, and richly will have deserved his 3rd place in the championship. He's going on in the JPS team next year